back to America.
Yeah.
And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to Life Real Talk with Nina. And today's guest is Sally A. Curtis. And Sally and I became very fast friends on our first Zoom, right? We
Mm,
just hit it off immediately.
just clicked.
Yes. So Sally is coming from down under, which is why we're not doing this at our usual time at 10 a.m., but at 3 p.m. Eastern. And it is like godly early, ungodly early at your neck of the woods, Sally, right?
It is. It's just on 6:30 in the morning. Lucky I like mornings.
Very lucky for us. Yes, indeed. You could not pay me enough to, well, you could pay me enough to do it, but I would still grumble. Anyway, Sally, you and I sort of clicked over many things, but in particular also over the whole like the consistency thing
Mm,
and repurposing, etc. So before we go into the gazillion questions I have for you, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit with your background so we have context for what it is that you're bringing to the table?
yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the easiest way to say that is I'm Sally A. Curtis. I'm a content repurposing whiz. I work with very brilliant individuals and help them to amplify and leverage their existing content into new profitable assets. We specialize in creating connection through visual graphics, and we're best known for turning books into 2 years worth of social media posts for our clients. From a background perspective, my background has always been in business development. So I'm always focused on how can we engage the audience, how can we get the audience and put bums on seats, because that was my background, was putting bums on seats for leaders around the globe, and how can we do that in a very humanized, engaging way. So that's been my background that has brought me full circle to the visual element and very much the consistency,
Yeah.
because consistency is definitely king.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, when we talked the first time, you totally had me at the concept of, taking a book and
Mm,
creating 200, no, what was it? 2 years worth of content from the book. I was like, I so love that because
yeah,
it's a great way of positioning yourself, of being memorable, and of showcasing what it is that you do for your clients.
yeah.
So you have an ecosystem of like two sets of clients, if I understand that correctly, right? How did you get into, because normally it's like, oh, you need to get the niche down and it's like
Yeah.
one avatar, blah blah blah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I suppose because of having that background in business development, so I worked with what I would classify as, your real strong leaders that were leading a very large community, business community, so often entrepreneurs, so more
Yeah.
public market versus corporate market.
Yeah.
And I cut my teeth on, how to set up a room and how to fill a room. So I've always worked with both high-end speakers and helped them fill their rooms. We did that through engaging on social media. So I've got what I call my legacy leavers, the ones that have got a great business, unpacked all of their intellectual property, and basically want to be able to give back and share more insights and wisdoms with their audience. So they're the legacy leavers. And then because of that background, everyone wants to know, well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So I then work with lots of up and coming speakers initially, but obviously now up and coming authors that are wanting to do more speaking. So it depends on where and what part of their journey they've created that book. Some do it at
Mhm.
the very beginning and some do it midway through. So a lot of what we do, as we've said, is that book maximizer and turning the books into social media content. Generally speaking, both of the avatars are looking for an increase in visibility, want to have a greater reach, and are wanting to be able to showcase themselves, as you said, demonstrate their expertise, but help people have forward movement without them while they're, getting to know them and building that deeper relationship.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And then So, and are they geographically different as well, right?
Oh, yeah. So predominantly US market, Australian market, and Europe market, and a little bit in New Zealand, which is almost Australia anyway.
For us over here on this side of the pond, for sure, I think Australians and New Zealanders might not agree.
No, that's right. That's why I said it.
Globally speaking, yes. So how do you go about? So I guess creating the content for your clients is, that's probably the easy part.
Mm.
So what happens on the implementation side?
On the implementation side, expand on that a little bit more. So is that us implementing or them
No, no. So
implementing?
like, if you're implementing, I know it's happening. Um,
Yeah.
so it's more the question of, since our minds sort of met over the consistency part.
Mm.
So I'm looking for a conversation around what is happening, and I'm assuming I have similar experiences with my clients.
Yeah.
Once people have their assets, and now they have the assets in their own little grubby hands, and now what?
Yes. Well, usually it goes like this. Now what? They've got it, and they go, now what? Now what do I do with it? So I think for you and I, the greatest thing that we do for our clients is help them move through overwhelm.
Yeah.
When first somebody's got a book and they go, what do I do with this book? Because generally speaking, we can't read our label when we sit inside our jar. So we've got our book, but we can't see our inner genius, even though, we've birthed this baby and put all of, blood, sweat and tears into this book. And then when I've turned that book into, 300 worth of tiles, or, whatever their number is, they sort of go, now what? So for us, it's also helping them be consistent. It depends on which avatar we're talking to. If it's the larger avatar, the legacy leaver, they've often got a marketing team that runs their marketing campaign, and then our stuff sits underneath as a consistency piece.
Mhm.
If it's a new person, they just generally go, now what? So part of what we do is help them choreograph visually their content, so it's actually leading to something. So it depends on whether they're doing a book launch, whether they're educating people because they're going to be launching an online program, or whether they've got something that they're doing already on a regular basis. We help them either plan and choreograph those visual tiles to help lead their audience to something. And for those that go, now what? We'll even do it for them. So, because I think one of the phrases we touched over was, successful brands are a product of trust, and trust is a product of consistency. And what I find is consistency is the most powerful differentiator in the marketplace, because most people aren't consistent. And when I say consistent, I don't necessarily mean posting every day or posting 2 times a day. It's finding your consistent rhythm that suits you and your clients. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and your clients, I think that's really important, because sometimes people are like, how often should I be posting? And my favorite answer to everything is, it depends.
Yes.
And I think, the easy way to talk about it is like, what is your sales cycle, right? If you
Yeah.
have an inexpensive, quick living thing, you need to post a lot more. And if you have the $50,000 package, and you only need to sell 4 of those a year, then you can probably afford to post once a week or twice a week or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I think one of the big things that I'm seeing a repeating pattern of is the newer people that are launching books, that haven't been in the marketplace regularly, but they've spent it purely because they've spent a lot of time, birthing this book,
Yeah.
is doing the great. I've got a book coming out. It's coming out in 2 weeks. I'll suddenly start posting on social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's and that seems to be almost considered normal, but from our perspective, from a humanized marketing perspective, and engaging your audience and actually really getting some consistency in there, it needs to be done at least 6 weeks or 3 months earlier. But that's a
At
Sally
a
Magnet.
minimum, at an absolute minimum. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell me if this is an inappropriate question, but so do you actually have physical people reading the books with a highlighter, or are you using AI for your tiles?
No, absolutely, people. So the thing that I've done, it's actually a natural. The book and extracting the content is very much a natural instinct to me.
Mhm,
When I go through with my highlighter pen and my pencil,
mhm.
back in the day, it would the right bits would actually jump off the page at me. They'd almost float up and they'd glisten gold. So it's very much, a bit woo woo. And that was the way I was able to see someone's inner genius, generally speaking, because I knew them so well and I knew what their audience was. It was easy for me to join those dots and the wording would jump off the
Mhm.
page. We do have a VA team. And they're brilliant, and they're all gifted in their own way. They're all slightly different personalities. So I look at the book, and then two of my other team members look at the book. So you've actually got three different personalities looking at it.
Oh, wow.
And we actually extract based on each three of us, all three of us, and then pop it into a spreadsheet. But because I was doing what I was doing so often for clients, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was just occurring because it was natural. It was instinctive.
Yeah.
I did have to take the time to unpack, well, where do I start? What do I do? And those sorts of things. And through being able to teach a VA team how to do it as equally as successfully, that was then when I realised that it's a skill that other people can learn. So that's another area that will go into as part of our business. We'll be demonstrating that, which is why I talk on it and talk about the three principles and the three easy steps of turning a book into content. The trouble is, as humans, and especially if we're slightly hard with the marketing brush, we actually try to overcomplicate everything, and it's not that. It's not a complicated process
Mhm.
when
So,
you're not inside your jar.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so three of you go through the book, and so each of you pull about 60 or 70 quotes because you see different things than the others see, right?
Yeah, and we generally get a bit of an overlap, which
I was
then
just going
that
to say, is there an
actually
overlap?
helps
Yeah,
us
yeah,
helps do
yeah.
that. We generally speaking, we've roughly know the number of tiles that we're looking for, and it's often what we call the first swing. So a client will say,
Mhm.
"Look, I just want 100 tiles, or I need 200 tiles."
Yeah,
So I'll work out what that ratio is per chapter, for example, and then the first instructions to the girls will be, can you find 3 quotes per chapter or 4 quotes per chapter, depending on how big the book is, or 10
yeah,
quotes per chapter, so we can refine it. Because ultimately what we were doing, when we get hold of a book, is there's so much gold in there, and again, we see it because we've got fresh eyes, that we literally could extract so much. So we'll often end up with a lot more than what we need. And then I'll say to the client, hey, we've got all of these other content opportunities here for us. Do you want us to do something else with it?
yeah.
Or the client will come back to us, which is why we've had clients with the same book that
Mhm.
have been with us for 3 years, because we'll do a swing back through, and the client will tell us, hey, look, my word this year is X. Can you do a swing back through the book and pull stuff out based on, on that
Focus on
topic
that. Yeah.
perspective? So it depends on how many swings we get to do a book. I've got to the 3.5 years with one client, and I've just sort of said, we need a new book, buddy. So,
Write a new book. We're done with this one. But
yeah,
that's
which is
amazing.
silly.
So that you, depending on what your focus is, you're reading the book with different eyes, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah. So, and a simple nuance with this client I was just talking about, the book was written originally for teams. And we've done a lot around team building and all those sorts of stuff. But this last year, because he was transitioning into it more leadership from teams, we actually looked at that same book, but with a different view, and just tweaked it
perspective.
more towards that leadership perspective.
Yeah,
And it was amazing how much content we got out of it, because we just changed the way in which we looked at it.
yep.
Yeah.
I think that's really amazing to just
Mm,
think of the process in itself, because that's how you really can extract from a blog post or an article you've written,
exactly.
or even like what we're doing here,
What you
right?
do.
So
Yeah.
This can be the transcript from which one can grab stuff. I actually send these talks to an editor, and I always promise myself I'll take notes with the time code when something smart was being said. And I never
Yes.
do, because I'm in the conversation and I'm enjoying it and I'm thinking ahead of what I'm going to ask next. And then
Yes.
I say to the editor, I say, please pull, I used to say, pull all the relevant, anything that's relevant. And he'd come back with like 20 clips.
Mm,
I'm like, I don't need 20 clips. I need 3 clips. So,
yeah.
so sometimes it depends on what the conversation is. If I go through it myself, I will pull completely different content than when he
Exactly.
goes through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he pulled some really lovely stuff that I didn't even realize we said during the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes he pulls stuff where I'm like, he's an all American, middle Midwest person, and much younger. He'll
Yeah.
pull stuff that I'm like, I don't even know what we talked about here. Like that's a reference that went right over my head.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, endless amounts of content, because in the end, we don't need that much content, right?
Not now.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what happens with it? So do the tiles? Does every single tile get used? Do the tiles? I'm assuming. I mean, the way I visualize, and I think I saw some of your visual work.
Yeah.
They're like quote tiles, right? But they're really beautifully designed to match that person's visual identity.
Yeah, very much so. So we'll work with the client's branding identity and the assets and the colours
Yeah.
that they've got. We may
Mm.
shift the colours slightly depending on the campaign, depending on how many campaigns that we may need to create out of that
Mhm.
content. And by campaigns, I mean we might create question tiles, which sort of helped with engagement, or
Mhm.
we might be doing educational tips, or we might be doing do's and don'ts. Like Sally loves do's and don'ts because she's bossy. And then we'll do, as you said, the quote tiles or the inspiration tiles,
Yeah.
or the uh, the demonstration of the transformation that the client gets. So we believe, well, actually, I should say, I believe. HubSpot says that there's actually 2 types of content: revenue generating and relationship building. I actually think there's 3, and the third one for us is the resonance content, and which is where we specialise with. Why we talk about visual and emotive imagery is if you know your avatar so intimately that you can demonstrate that to them, so they've got a mirror reflection with those tiles,
Mhm.
that deepens the relationship, and you get a resonance, and that person says, "Oh my God, she gets me." So we're very strong on creating that visual connection, that resonance with the audience, which is what we specialise in. So when we say a quote tile, yes, it is a quote on a tile, but the resonance of the visual imagery is what actually connects and engages the audience and makes our audience or makes our client, I should say, stand out and be sought after, because their audience goes, "My God, that's my obvious person. She gets me."
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, so. You're basically creating with the tiles and the visualization, and so it's the word and it's the visualization. You're kind
Yes.
of building that trust that you mentioned earlier, and the consistency element of it, compounds the trust and
Yes.
the sort of recognition factor, which is pretty much what we're doing with video, where
Correct.
I'm sitting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, which is why I always say, like, it's so important to make sure that you know how you're showing up, because that makes or breaks that trust element beyond the consistency, etc.
Yeah. And that's the bit, I suppose, a bit you would see, and the bit that I see a lot is when somebody hasn't sort of thought about the fact that they're creating tiles and
Mm,
they're doing them haphazardly, or they're changing their topic all the time, then they're not being memorable, or they're being memorable for the wrong reasons, because
wrong
people are
reasons.
going, "I don't get it."
Yeah.
And people can't buy into or resonate or understand, because there's not that consistency. And I can, from my perspective, if I look back I'm going to say 10 years, it's probably 15, but we won't go there. I
Yeah.
remember when, I hadn't unpacked what I did, and I didn't really know what I did. I just did it. It was instinctive.
Yeah.
People loved me and I had a great community, but I used to always get, what are you doing now?
Oh,
Because
interesting.
they
Yeah.
didn't get what I did, and to them I was changed. It was, I'd change what I was doing, like I was changing dresses and trousers and things, but
Yeah.
I didn't think I was, but
Right.
my audience did. So there's that lack of trust, and we like you, Sally, but we don't get what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that very often, it's partially that we maybe not communicate cleanly or clearly enough what it is that we do. But I
Yeah.
also think there's a lot of people who, in this state of overwhelm of too much information, just lump us together into that group of stuff that the marketing and advertising departments do, right? Especially when they come from corporate,
Yes.
where it's like, yeah, no, that's not what I do at all.
Yes.
And never have and never will be,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when they're
Exactly.
like, oh, and you so media buying, I'm like, no, 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 that's a whole other profession,
Yes.
whole other
Yeah.
skill set. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so other than books, what are other places um, where content can be used and repurposed? And how far can you go in repurposing? I know it's a double question. Let me ask
Yeah,
you.
no, yeah, absolutely. So there's that's a really good question because everybody asks that one. There is so, and I went through. I was looking for something yesterday and went through 2 boxes and went, oh my god, I've got so much content, and I'm somebody that doesn't write.
Yeah.
It doesn't write. I'd rather speak. So
Mhm,
content is absolutely everywhere. I have had and created content off a napkin when someone's had a brain dump when they've been at a restaurant.
mhm,
It's manuscripts, it's videos, it's podcasts,
mhm.
it's Zoom recordings with
Yeah.
clients, maybe some of the way in which you ask questions. It's journals. It's those, 2 a.m. rants when you just get stuff out of your head or you're telling somebody off in an email.
Mhm,
Content is everywhere. And how many of us have got USBs with just stuff on it? I mean, in one of my talks, I talk about, how you can go about productizing. And I had 13, can't put my hands on them quickly enough. I had 13 USBs. And I found on that as an example where I'd done a 45-minute presentation and I'd, done a bit later, a workshop on it. And it
mhm.
was like, oh my God, that could be an online, there's things that can be turned into other things that can be
Yeah,
turned
yeah, yeah.
into other
Lots
things.
of
So
things. Yep, yep,
content is everywhere.
yeah.
The key is knowing where to start, how to sort it, and what to prioritize, because otherwise that little example that I've shared is another overwhelm spot for most clients. They go, I've got so much content, where do I start? Which
Mhm,
is why we always talk about what's your keyword, what are your key topics, and let's work out what those keywords are, and then this is what we do, because
mhm,
there's 2 processes. It's either give us your book
mhm,
or inundate us with all your stuff, and then we'll do a lot of those other elements as well.
mhm,
But it's about sorting it out. What's the word? What are you selling into?
mhm.
What are your audience needing right now? What's the marketplace telling you? And that's how we prioritize what content we create and when.
And that sorry, I have to slide in yet another
Yep.
question.
Right.
So, the book is the book, right? Once it's out, that is it.
Yeah.
But I would imagine with all the other stuff is if it's shorter lived, it might not be feasible to create that much content in advance because it might be a morphing or living and breathing thing that changes, as we change our products or our ideas, or we finesse what we're doing.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, very much so. So an example of that, if and this was in my very, very early days of when it's, so I'll explain it this way. I stop getting excited. In the early days of doing the book repurposing, as an example, a client came to me with a book that they'd written 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We went through our extraction process. We didn't do the creation process, but we went through the extraction process, and sort of provided the Excel spreadsheet with all of this gold that we'd found in it.
Mm.
And the client, because it was 5 years old and they'd moved on and had written other books in between, they went, but that's not me. That doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, but that's what you're
It
doing.
did, and the content was still relevant, but because they had moved, like, any good coach, you coach people that are 5 years or, 10 years behind you. She personally had grown so much that as a client, she didn't resonate with it. But for her clients that were starting their journey, the content was very relevant. So
Um,
it's understanding that nuance as well. You might have grown up from that content, but there's some audience members that would still want that. And that, for us, when we're working with a client from a bigger perspective, is they have moved on, their clients have moved on, but if they want to reopen a new market, that's an opportunity to open a new market.
to start at that lower level
Yeah,
where people recognize themselves, right? And
yeah.
I think you're bringing up something really brilliant that I never thought of, which is 2022 having been the year it was. I sometimes feel like the conversation is stagnant, or I'm talking and no one's listening. And
Mm,
maybe that, it is because my audience is where it has always been, but I've moved on
yes,
to a
you're bored with it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
potentially. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's what we hear, because as humans, we're growing on. But this is another mentor's tip for me, and I always remember it because she repeated it 3 times, just like my mother did. And she went, "Sally, the money is in the boring." I'm like,
eh? Yeah,
"What?
the money is in the
In
boring.
the boring?" So when we're bored with it is usually when we want to move on,
Yes.
but we actually need to work out how to stay there, or automate, or see, even the pen's out. See, it's got into bossy mode now.
Yeah.
Um, it's
I've got
working out.
highlighter too. Here we go.
Yes, how to
Yeah.
stay in that space and
Mm,
serve in that space, but
mm,
also move on at the same time. So this is about maintaining and
mm.
opening new markets, because we generally, as creators and the leader of the pack, we are always looking to the future, so we move to the future.
Yeah.
But there's opportunities, and that's more around systems and building things out
Yeah.
to stay where the money is. The money's in the boring.
Yeah.
Serve the community that are needing it. But if we've got bored with it, it's how do we, jiggle that up for our own sanity and our own creativity.
You see, now I'm writing a note for my editor. The money is in the
It's in
boring.
the boring.
And,
Yeah,
and the time code. I'm like,
yeah,
that one I'm definitely getting out. It
yeah.
is so brilliant that we're talking about this, because I was just talking to a coach I work with who was really, we have like one-on-ones and groups with her, and apparently all of us in the group at the pretty much at the same time were talking about creating new lead net magnets. And she was
Mm,
like, why? And we're like, and I was like, well, we've had our quiz, for nearly a year now. And she's like, you're bored with the quiz? I'm like, yeah. And she said, like, but the person who doesn't know you yet, they're still going to think that the quiz is absolutely freaking brilliant. And I'm like,
correct. Yeah.
oh, but I really must say, this year, I took a big leap this year, last year, this year, as in the last 12 months, and hired a performance coach to get my performance from being very serviceable to
Mm,
being just much better, more entertaining, funnier, and to kind of get a sense of how I come across in
mm,
general. Um,
mm,
and that has then also elevated, if you want to say that, my conversation around creating videos
mm,
to more to the performance level, and the how you show up, and what content is appropriate or not appropriate. It just, and I'm like, wow, it kind of took the conversation away from the how do I create a video, How do
Yeah.
I edit a video? How often do I need to post? And I'm like, I've answered those questions 100 times. And, so we have to be careful of our own boredom.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That was such a powerful lesson for me when she shared it with me. And she'd
yeah,
had that same experience. She'd created a business, or she actually created 3 business, walked away, was in the process of creating another one, and then sort of went, but they're not doing it the way that I did, and went back into it because she'd moved on to different businesses because she'd got bored and they basically plateaued. But the minute she went back in and did what she was great at, they went through the roof again. And her thing, and she's now stayed in that space and done exceptionally well. And that was what was the greatest lesson around the money's in the boring. And I think, and that's why people also aren't consistent, is because they get, there's overwhelm, but I think boredom also kicks in, and that's where consistency
yeah,
becomes unstuck
yeah,
again as well.
yeah.
Which I didn't realize until this conversation. So there's gold nugget for me.
Yeah, boredom versus consistency. I think
Yeah,
there's definitely some content there as well. And
yeah,
and you're absolutely right. And we were talking about this when we spoke earlier this week. I told you that I could fill probably a year's worth of LinkedIn content with the
yeah,
content I haven't used yet, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
created, but not used yet.
yeah,
And but there's something where, or there's brilliant stuff that should be recycled.
yeah.
Because that's the other thing, right? And I do want to get to that as well, repurposing
Mm,
versus recycling.
mm,
And I just feel that it's the boredom that kills us, right? And puts us of our own doing into overwhelm, because we always have the shiny new thing, be it that it's an intellectual exercise, that it's something that we learned and we want to desperately share with our
mm.
audience, or be it that we just need the thrill of the new, right?
Yeah, yeah, we do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Recycling versus repurposing. How would you? How do you go about? I mean, do you see
Define the two. Yeah,
what's the difference for you for the two of them? First of
yeah.
all,
So I think from our perspective, when we're in that inundation process where somebody's just gone, just like you, I've got all this stuff. What do I do with it? And literally, the worst case, best case scenario I've had, where someone, usually we get, a couple of folders with lots, maybe quite a number of files in there, but one client gave me 42 folders.
yikes!
That was extreme. That's not quite what we do, but so looking through that again, starting with that, the keyword and the key topics, what's our focus for the 12 months, etc. So I would say repurposing is about what are we going to be using now that's leading somewhere.
Mhm.
Uh, Recycling is what can I productize. So I see recycling as income streams, as productization, because recycling means that content has had some form of evergreen element to it, e.g. that it's got longevity to it, it's got tips, it's got structure, it's got steps. That's a way of potentially productizing. Now, productizing in itself can be lots of different forms. That can be online programs, which, everyone, that's trending left, right, and centre at the moment. If you want to do that, there's those options. But it could be a nurture sequence.
Yeah.
It could be if for the corporate clients, it could be a value add after they've done a keynote. Hey, I'm coming in, I'm going to do a keynote, I'm going to do some training, but I've got this really great content library where I can drip feed your team something every
Mhm.
week to inspire and keep reminding them of the great experience
Yeah.
that we had at the conference, those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
I see recycling almost as, what can I productize it? What can I it's got really good legs or really good bones, which
Mhm.
means it can be we actually call it revamping, but it is actually that recycling. What can it be revamped into that becomes another either income stream, Now, income streams is yes, you're exchanging money, so you're selling it, or it could be something that could be bundled up and as a value add with a collaborative partner, for example. So you could collaborate with somebody that's got some content that you maybe want to share with your audience that they can then share with their audience. So that to me is what that recycling or revamping is versus repurposing, which is sort of more the immediate stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I would have defined it at much more shallowy on the surface of just creating content for social media, saying that repurposing is taking something that was in one medium and putting it into another.
Correct.
And a recycling to me would have been just basically posting the exact same thing again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah.
And and the thing is, like, even with your tiles, I mean, if somebody has 2 freaking years worth of tiles, when you're done with, I don't know, 700 and what is 365 times 2? I'm not going to do the math right now. It's 820, 830
A lot. Yeah.
ish. I would start from scratch again if the book was still relevant. You know what I mean? Because no one's going to remember the tile you put out 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we call them, that's why we say we build you a library of reusable brand assets. So
Yeah.
here's a little nugget. Yes, I think the most people need to see something at least 3 times.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, on an average, the touch points is actually 11. So 3 times is, a very small amount based on the 11 times that somebody often needs a touch point.
Yeah.
But the beauty of the work that we do as well is obviously you can swap out and change the color to a different campaign color. So, but you
Yeah.
can still use the same content. But the beauty of it is because of the stills that we do, and yes, we do the video versions of the tiles, is when you've got you can actually, I'm going to call it, string the tiles together, and you've gone from a singular static tile to a number of tiles in a chain that becomes a video.
Yeah.
So, that's, it's the same content, but it's just been used differently.
Right. The carousel then. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
carousel.
And I mean, even like sometimes I post videos that I've created that I think are really good, but it was a low news day, meaning, no one really gave it any love. I'm going to take that same video and the exact same post, and I'm just going to repost it again a couple of months later on a high traffic day. And I know, I kind of know what my high traffic days are versus my lower traffic days.
Yeah.
And I know I should be doing this a lot more often, but then again, shiny object, I'm like, oh, let me shoot some more videos. And here I go, another series of 10 videos. But, on the other hand, also, by keep doing videos and keep trying out new things, I also then learn what works and doesn't, which is something I bring back to my clients, right? So
yeah, exactly.
there's that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there anything that you would like me to ask that I haven't asked you?
That's a really good question. I think we've covered so much at this stage. Wow. No, I think we've probably covered most things. I think for everybody, it's just my suggestion would be it's about finding consistency is finding your rhythm and then sticking to that rhythm because even when it gets boring, from there.
Even if it gets boring, yeah. And I think for I think actually, brilliantly boring business, which is something that I've heard before, and my coach uses that too. It is. I think that's what we all want because
that's where the scale is.
Because then we can focus on the things that we really want to focus on.
Correct. Yeah.
Like finding more people to help or hobbies or family or time off or whatever it is that floats your boat. Hopefully all of the above.
Yes.
So if people are interested in connecting with you and learning more about your services, where do they go?
best place is obviously always LinkedIn for me. You'll find me on most platforms, but LinkedIn's the place that I like to play the most, and you can find me at Sally A. Curtis there. I do have a Linktree link, which will enable you to catch everything all at once, and that's Linktree /Sally A. Curtis as well. You'll also on that link find I've got a free ebook there, which talks you through the 3 easy steps of turning your book into 2 years worth of social media posts. And we do have our own quiz on your content marketing success on there as well. So a quick and easy link for checking me out, stalking me, and grabbing some value there as well.
Love it. We're all for the social media, the kind social media stalkers. And since you told me about your Linktree, I've got mine open as like the 250,000th tab on my browser, and I'm like, I haven't touched my Linktree in years, and I'm like, oy vey, there's stuff on there that doesn't even link to anything anymore. So
yeah, well, I've got to say I had not used Linktree up until, I'm going to say 12 months. It wasn't quite 12 months, and it has been the best tool for me. QR code on there and everything. Really nice way to lay it out. If you want to see and experience how clients have the opportunity to use one link as a shopping list, check out my Linktree so you can go and duplicate it for yourself, because it's been an incredible asset for me. That's just another Sally nag.
Okay, good. And I will put, and that the Sally nag, that is such an Australian thing.
Yeah.
Americans wouldn't say that. And I love that when
No,
you say
okay.
Yeah, I love that. So I'll put the link to your social media, to your LinkedIn profile, and to the Linktree into the comments after the show, because I'm flying solo these days and don't have I used to have a VA in the background who would do all these things. But anyway, as we say in German, self is the woman, which it doesn't really translate into English. Doesn't matter. Anyway, if we don't have any more questions, and we do need to talk. I do want to talk about our challenge, though, just for a hot second.
We do our play, yes.
Yes, ha ha ha. So Sally and I put our brilliant heads together, hers and half of mine, and we came up with the idea of creating a LinkedIn content challenge, which we're launching on February 10th. So it's coming up soon. And it's going to be a week's worth of posting every day in a group setting with support from Sally and me and my partner Robin, where we'll actually show you like really nifty ways of that being, like sort of embracing that holy grail of consistency with your posting, in particular on LinkedIn for this challenge. And would love to have you join us. And I will put the link for that into the comments as well. And it's for free, so no reason not to join. And kickoff call is on a Friday the 10th. Australians, it'll be Saturday morning, which Sally promises me is a good time. And then we'll be posting the following week, Monday through Friday.
Absolutely. And I think from my perspective, it's such a great way to build that muscle about being consistent. For me, it's all about creating the right habits. And creating the right habits is often done when it's done with friends and fun. And we promise to make it friends and fun and regular Sally nags and Nina nags if appropriate. But it's all about letting us lead the way and showing you how to be consistent in a different way, in a new and an inspired way. So come along and play. We'll make it fun. You'll learn a lot, and you'll start to really hone in that consistency, because as I said, with my final thought is consistency is the greatest differentiator in the marketplace. If you want to stand out, be sought after and sold out, you need to be consistent.
Brilliant. That'll be the third clip.
Uh-oh.
No. All right, Sally, thank you so much for getting up super early, being actually awake, alert, and absolutely delightful for our Real Talk with Nina. And I know you and I will see a lot of each other in the near future, and I very much look forward to that. And thank you for sharing your brilliance and your thoughts with us here on the show today.
Very welcome. Thank you very, very much for such a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. See you soon.
You will.